Today's episode of Lions of Liberty is brought to you by MathBot.com. MathBot.com is a fun little game that fills a serious hole that the public and even the private schools miss, and that is knowledge of programming and the math behind programming. MathBot.com gives parents a much-needed tool to make sure their children don't fall behind in this new information age. Software is eating the world, and those who don't know how to code will be left behind as more and more jobs become automated. MathBot.com gives kids and even adults like me the knowledge needed to thrive in this new world. MathBot may just seem like a fun and simple game, but behind the scenes it uses the same method Julius Caesar, Isaac Newton, Einstein, and everyone else were all taught math before the state got its greasy hands into education. This method goes all the way back to classical Greece, the dawn of civilization. MathBot will gradually upload the math and logical skills needed to understand programming into the mind of any player. It's said that the pen is mightier than the sword, but now code is even mightier than the pen. So become mighty and learn to code over at mathbot.com.
Welcome to the Lions of Liberty podcast. Here's your host, your guide, your shining beacon of liberty, Marc Claire.
All right, friends, and welcome back. It's been a little while since we've done one of these, at least for the public folks. The Patreon folks have heard a really long, awesome 2-hour Libertarians in living rooms drinking liquor, but we are back once again in the Liberty living room, or several Liberty living rooms, or no living rooms at all, to be perfectly honest. But I am here with some of my favorite Lions of Liberty, starting with, I'm going to throw a bone to you guys. I'm going to mix things up. I'm going to start with the man known as Rico. Rico, what's up? Welcome back.
I wasn't prepared to start. I was
hoping to catch you mid pork chop. Rico's currently eating a pork chop.
I was finishing up, picking the bone, and trying to figure out some technological issues. So it's all going crazy.
Issues.
Yes,
like pressing record on a program.
Yes, I'm getting the usual click. So I was gonna text you off the air and say, "How do I stop this?" Like I do every time.
That thing, yeah.
But
Are you drinking over there or just eating pork chops?
I am. And there was a little bit of a snafu with my preferred drink, of course. I was planning on drinking some vodka soda, be healthy. And the soda water that I put in my beer fridge is frozen. So
you're going to just drink vodka?
Might want to adjust those settings a little bit.
Yeah. So, yeah. That's what I'm drinking, a Corona until I figure out life.
So you'll just continue to drink Coronas forever.
Remember the days when people would wait till they were brought into the show and introduced before they started talking?
That's taking too damn long, man.
Well, Rico had to tell us about his situations.
Yeah, I had situations. Multiple.
Situations here, all right? Brian McWilliams, speaking of the situation. Remember the situation from Jersey Shore?
He's in jail. I hope he can listen to our podcast.
Yeah, he's in jail. Hello, this is Brian. I'm drinking rosé because I'm classy.
Brian, for new listeners, what is your role here on Lions of Liberty? Do you do anything else, or do you just come on here and bitch about how long it's taking to get to you?
I just yell incoherently.
Every Wednesday on Electric Liberty Land. Don't worry. I'll handle your promos for you. And lastly, but certainly not leastly, we have what may actually be the most media-savvy Lion right now, because Howie has just been making the podcast rounds. He is, of course, the godfather of all Lions of Liberty, because he seeded me with the ideas of liberty, which I then later spread to all of you later, which many of you have heard the story of in podcasts.
I don't think I'd use the term I seeded you with the...
Maybe it's not the best choice of words. I mean...
But
spreads like a virus. We could call it Hep L for Liberty.
So folks that don't have video, I'm looking at Marc right now. Did you cut your hair off or something?
No, it's back there. It's
just okay. Thank God.
I have it in a little man bun.
I have a little man bun.
A little manny tail.
So here's the thing. I talked about this on the League of Liberty podcast, which we recorded right before the show, which you'll be hearing later this week. I got a haircut, and for me, a haircut is just like cut an inch off and clean me up a little. But the way she cut it, it just looks a little too much like He-Man. So I'm kind of like, I don't like looking at it right now. So that's why it's back there.
This is like when I changed your Facebook profile
to He-Man. Yeah.
So Marc, you mentioned I've been making the media rounds, but the thing I want people to really listen to, well, first you're going to have to join the Lions of Liberty Patreon. But if you like League of Liberty, but wish it was just like good and better, there's the Legion of Liberty Doom. First episode's out. The next one is going to be sooner than the next League of Liberty, probably.
Really? Did you already record it? Because if not, you're going to have a race against time to get it up before we do.
You mean a race to get it up before the next full moon? What is that, like 3-4
It's in the bank, baby. It's already recorded. I can edit it before I edit this show if I want.
All right.
Are you guys recording like in an hour?
We're just
Wouldn't you like to know?
We're going to use this show right now and just leak it out.
All right. Well, if you want to hear either the League of Liberty podcast, which stars myself, Roger Paxson of the Lava Flow, Johnny Rocket Adams of Blast Off, and Chris Spangle, or the fraudulent version of that program called Legion of Dinky Liberty Doom Somethings, then either way, you should join our Patreon, patreon.com/Lions of Liberty, and check out all the excellent bonus roundtables we do, including a 2-hour. I still think that's one of the best shows we ever did, the 2-hour Libertarians and Living Rooms Drinking Liquor we did last month. I got the drunkest I think I had in a while anyway, maybe that's why it seems more fun.
Drunk. Yeah, 7 martinis during that show.
So happy President's Day, everybody, by the way. Of course, it's not that day yet for us, but for those listening. Is that even a thing libertarians would say? Happy President's Day? Probably not, right?
I don't think anybody says
happy
that,
about
really.
presidents?
I don't think
nobody says that. Nobody says that.
Did everybody
I don't think I've ever heard that
their
term.
president's card?
So is President's Day for all presidents, or is it like Washington, Lincoln, or something?
Well, I think it used to be. It was like Lincoln and Washington had their own holidays, right? And then they merged them into President's Day. But
yeah,
it's not
I always
called
felt like
Lincoln and
maybe I'll
Washington
just
Day.
take a half day off because I kind of like Washington a bit, but I don't like Lincoln at all. I don't know.
I was reading a list, and someone put Lincoln as number 4 in their top 5 libertarian presidents. I was like, well, this guy doesn't know anything.
It was Bill Welds.
I mean,
Terrible list.
I mean, if you're just running down a checklist, if you haven't really dived into, history from anything beyond a surface level view of what you're told in school, Lincoln would be one of the most libertarian presidents if you're just going by free the slaves and nothing else and you don't know anything else, But of course, we know that it's a little more complicated than that, and he really didn't even free the slaves. That happened afterwards, and the slaves he did free were only in the South for strategic purposes, while the slavery remained legal in the North the whole time. So
basically what Lincoln did is, like, if it was a business, he would have given overtime to all the people in his opponent's camp and denied overtime to his own people so that he would continue to make a profit.
Did they not have equal protection back in the day? I guess they didn't. That was part of the 14th Amendment. But it seems a little unfair that only the slaves in the certain colonies got rights. And
it seems unfair in general that for the slaves as a whole doesn't
well,
seem
I guess
fair.
there were only slaves in the South. Yeah.
Splitting hairs here, buddy.
That wasn't their number one criticism of life. It was like, this Emancipation Proclamation. I don't know if it was legal. We better bide our time.
Like, hold on, boys. This might not be legal. Let's all just stay where we're at for now until this thing gets a resolution we can agree on.
We got to go to the Ninth Circuit first.
Did you guys know that during the Revolutionary War, one of Britain's complaints about the American colonies was that we're the slave owners? So it was like, they're like, oh, these Americans and their slaves, we need to stop that. So if you think Revolutionary War was good, I guess you're on the side of slavery.
Well, because they had ended slavery earlier, so maybe to them it was also, I'm sure there was a moral position by many people, but it's also like, oh, the U.S. has this economic advantage because they can just use this slave labor, and now we got to hire people? This sucks.
Yeah, it's just ironic to me that if you have any kind of sympathy for the South in the American Civil War at all, of course, the only reason you could possibly think that is because you're for slavery.
Well, I also hate the idea
but
that
you don't
the
think
South,
that at all about the Revolutionary War.
I hate the idea that the South is just populated with pro-slavery racists when there were large abolition movements within the South. Most people most human beings in the South were not slave owners. Slave owners were the wealthy people that owned plantations and that sort of thing. It's not like the average citizen owned
The
a slave.
1% of the 1%?
Right, or even supported slavery. I'm sure, and obviously, in a way, the whole South supported slavery by allowing it to remain legal. But it's not like it was free of controversy, and it certainly doesn't justify slaughtering people en masse, many of which were slaves who were fighting for the South, and many of which were probably sympathetic to the slavery cause.
Yeah, I would love to get.
Cause,
I wish we got rid of slavery without killing like 500,000 people.
Right. If you just had to kill a few people, if you wanted to actually end slavery the right way, I would say, do something that's Lincoln did, declare all slavery. No, he didn't really do it that way, but just declare it illegal as it should be because it's a human right to not be a slave. And then say, slave owners, you have X number of days to get rid of your slaves or we're considering you criminals and outlaws. Now, obviously, that's complicated when the South wants to protect slavery, which they did. And I think that is a mistake a lot of libertarians do make, is acting like part of the South's reason for the war was not slavery when it clearly, based on their own declarations and their own documents, was. I just think that the other side of that is that it was not Lincoln or the North's primary motivation was not freeing the slaves. It was more of a wedge issue they could use for the war, but it wasn't really the moral compass. It certainly wasn't the moral compass of Abraham Lincoln or many other leaders in the North. I'm sure it was the moral compass of many in the abolition movement, which Lincoln was trying to please with this stuff. But to act
how long into the Civil War was the Emancipation Proclamation? Like 4 years or so?
It was like 2 years in. I think it was 63. I guess I could fact check. I'm not a fan of facts as much.
Someone else will look into it, I'm sure. But it wasn't like right away. He's like,
no, it wasn't.
We want to win the war, but we don't want to free slaves.
I was right. It was January 1st, 1863, which is 2 years after the war started. So what's that tell you?
It was on the bottom of his bag of tricks.
He's like, all right, so if this isn't going well, I'm going to try this sort of freeing the slave statement, which literally, the Emancipation Proclamation literally affected no slaves, because in the South, they're not going to be like, oh, Lincoln said it's illegal, so it is. So it didn't affect any of them, and it didn't apply to the northern states. So it affected 0 slaves who were actually freed by this. 0. So there. So fuck Lincoln, that's my point. Oh, and the whole jailing journalists and, raping and pillaging Atlanta and burning it down and, all sorts of atrocities like that. I think there's better ways to free slaves, personally. So we're not going to put Lincoln in our top libertarian presidents.
Yeah. One of the tricky things
Mark
is just trying to figure out how you could free the slaves and then like what you would do with all of them. Because
I'm all for violence to free slaves if that's what it takes. But there's a difference between violence against a specific slave owner who refuses to free somebody and violence versus the entirety of, the southern half of a country.
So, Mark, Lincoln's not one of our top libertarian presidents. So then wasn't Jefferson Davis your top one?
Is this a joke?
The president of the Confederacy, the Confederate States.
What do you think I am, Tom Woods? No,
I guess it wasn't a good joke.
No, I got where you're going there. It took a second. Howie was just calling me a neo-Confederate was the joke about that,
I think Howie should teach an alternative history to like third graders. Kind of like
Howie's history.
Like the Willard preacher at Penn State who would just sit on the steps and people would listen to him. Like when kids get out of school.
And then Jesus rode an antelope across a rainbow bridge. And they're like, whoa, he did do that.
Kids, are you for the revolution? Oh, then you're for slavery.
Did he just make stuff up? Because I'd have to do that.
I'm pretty sure he was making stuff up. Yeah.
I didn't get interested in history till like maybe 2 years ago. When I was a kid, I'm like, I don't give a shit about this. I want to hear about like knights in the Middle Ages, and that's it.
Let's say it doesn't matter if you're making shit up anyway, because all this history we have right now is pretty much made up.
It really is.
None of what they have in school books is accurate.
I can't wait to see the school books to talk about the Trump presidency.
Oh, it's going to be fantastic.
It'll probably be like whitewash from history. Once the Kamala Harris is in her second term in 2028 or whatever, she'll just redact everything that happened between 2016 and 2020. There'll just be an empty head in the list of presidents. There will be no history for these 4 years.
In like 20 years, we'll be doing another Conspiracy Corner Mandela Effect episode being like, I swear I remember there was a president, Donald Trump. Everybody says it wasn't. It was from Barack Obama. We had our first black president, to Kamala Harris, our first black female president.
Hey,
I swear.
She's mixed.
Like, no, Donald Trump was just this real estate guy, and he had a reality show, and it actually came back in 2016. They brought The Apprentice back. You guys don't remember that? Which is a great way to plug another reason to join the Lions of Liberty Pride, our group on Patreon at patreon.com/Lions of Liberty, so you can hear our conspiracy corners where we dive into various conspiracy theories, such as the Mandela effect. And that's all I'm going to say about it now, because otherwise things are going to get too weird. And we wouldn't want that.
Yeah.
No, we wouldn't. I did want to circle back to kind of even the premise of this conversation, talking about presidents and as it relates to libertarianism. Let's just start with this question. Can there be such a thing as a libertarian president? Or is the office, by its very nature of the fact that you're sort of controlling this coercive federal system and that you have sort of dictatorial powers and almost have to violate the non-aggression principle to even hold the office and execute the duties, can you even be a libertarian and a president at the same time in the pure, maybe Roger Paxton type sense?
I think you would have to go back to like the establishment of the government in the first place and say, was the what was it, the Continental Congress, when the states ratified the Constitution and all that, did that really have the implied consent of everyone or just the people in the particular meeting? Because otherwise, then you can't have.
Well, it clearly didn't involve the consent of everyone.
Yeah. So unless it did, then you'd have to say no. Well, I would have to say no.
Anybody else?
I think
Or
you could have
is
a
your mind
libertarian
too blown?
president for exactly one day. The one day you go in and decide to declare that everything's gone, the government shut down, and everybody go home, clean out your desks. And then-
Executive
what if you just
order,
said, what
no
if you
more
came
government.
in, what if I'm elected president someday in like 2038 or something? I'm not even sure if that's an election year. When I'm running against Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and so I get in, I become president. Everyone is excited about it, and then I get in and I say, all right, starting day one, anything that violates the non-aggression principle, I will not allow the federal government to enforce, and anything else that shouldn't be covered by the federal government, the states can just figure out, and so we'll just have like some user fees, and if you want to support the federal military, then you have to send us money for, voluntarily. I don't know.
How did you
Are there
get
things I could do
elected?
to make it libertarian? I don't know.
How'd you get elected? Did you take matching funds? Did you go on the federal
ran with-
airwaves?
I ran with Bill Weld. On the League of Liberty that we just recorded, Chris Spangle actually posed a funny question to me. He said, what if you went on 23andMe and got a DNA test and it showed that Bill Weld was your father? And my answer was,
No!
I would say, good. It would mean Bill Weld finally created one libertarian.
Nice.
That was my on-the-feet
So,
response to that.
I mean, I don't think we
Get
could
it?
have a libertarian president that would meet Roger's definition, but I would be happy with
Probably not Rogers, no.
if somebody were elected and 100% of their effort was just unwinding this thing, turning the bus around, if it was less and less government, less regulations, less foreign involvement, if they're going the other direction we've been going for hundreds of years, I'd be happy to call them a libertarian president, support them.
Well,
in
let's say
everything
this.
they do.
You definitely couldn't have an anarchist president because that would not make sense.
Well-
you can't consistently be both those things. But you could have a minarchist libertarian president who was doing enough good stuff that we would be pretty happy with it.
I think you could have an anarchist president that realized that his goals wouldn't be achieved in his lifetime, and they were just kind of incrementally trying to get towards that.
Sure,
I
but if
mean,
you're against all government as an anarchist in that sense, then how can you hold the highest possible position in the government?
I'm not a philosopher, Mark. I don't know.
Well, then what the hell are we doing here?
I thought we were going to talk about.
One of my favorite things about having video, not to plug the Patreon too much, but you can see video if you go on Patreon for $10 or higher. You get to see Rico just yelling at his, I presume it's his son in the background that he's yelling at. Or it could be the dog. You're also muted, Rico.
Yeah, he doesn't understand that he's making noise. Even when I'm muted, it goes to the microphone, which Mark will have to edit out later.
Maybe he should come on the show.
Well, do you want to be on the show? He says.
Does
no.
he? Who's his favorite libertarian president?
Jordan, who's your favorite president? Yeah.
Obama.
Oh, what a joke. Go beat him
In
now.
fairness,
You're-
the kids. In
I
fairness,
think
the kids only
said
seen
that
two
to mess
presidents.
me.
So.
I don't know. I may have to. Actually, Barack Obama's election day was when the day he was born. So
Oh wow. Well,
There's
that's
no
fair.
excuse.
Rico, ask him if he supports the Revolutionary War, and then tell him he's
All right.
he was sitting next to me during that conversation. He was giving me dirty looks. He could only hear what I was saying. It's like, you support slavery?
Rico, if you ever win like Powerball, you need to hire me to homeschool your child. He'll get the Howie's history, and we'll straighten this all out.
Howie's history.
Howie. You can call it
Homeschool
Howie
class.
Warts. Just
Coming soon to Lions of Liberty, our homeschool course called Howie's History.
And I'll come home and there'll be like half-eaten cactuses. Jordan will be sleeping on a roof. And I'm like, what did you guys do in school today?
Get a fake law degree with Rico's Law School. Another also coming to Lions of Liberty soon.
I think you maybe can you get one of those from like the Universal Life Church? Or no, I think just
A
like
law degree?
No, you could get like PhDs in divinity so you can be doctor.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, I wouldn't mind doing that.
I need to up my game and do that.
Dr. Claire.
Doctor.
Your host, your guide, your shining Doctor of Liberty. That could be my new title.
You should do it.
For as little as $60.
Aren't you a minister or one of
I
you?
am a minister.
I'm a minister.
I am certified.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, if anyone wants to, maybe we should
You're
offer.
not a minister. Rico.
Maybe we should offer Lions of Liberty marriages as a Patreon bonus at a certain level. If you're at a
Oh,
certain
that'd be
level,
awesome.
either I or Brian, or perhaps the two of us jointly holding hands, can I don't know why we're holding hands in this weird scenario. Can proceed over your wedding.
Hey,
Is that
when
like the $100 level?
And you pay us in just open bar. If you have open bar, we're there, and you pay it for us.
Oh
You
yeah.
gotta pay for us to get there, though.
So when we go to Vegas, you can maybe marry a couple people and pay for the strip club.
I
Yeah.
don't see why not.
Perfect.
I don't see why not. That sounds great.
I just went on a cold streak. Hold on, I got to marry someone real quick and get my money back.
BRB.
So are we actually going to talk about who everybody thinks is the most libertarian president?
Yeah, that's the whole idea.
Man,
All right.
I haven't thought about
Or maybe
this
least
at
sadist.
all.
Well,
Or done
that's
any research into
you don't
it.
have to think about it. We think about it out loud while we drink, and then that's what happens. So
And
it's all
like
good.
and like none of them are perfect.
Well, aren't all the best libertarian presidents the ones history would say were the worst presidents?
Probably.
Yeah.
probably.
Unless you were like attending Howie's history. Yeah.
Like, was it Coolidge who was, or what, Taft? I forget which one was the do nothing president.
I think they said that about Coolidge. He's not
Like-
even my he's not my top two.
Well, William Henry Harrison is the one that died like after 8 months or something, and literally did nothing. So some would argue, that he, just by the fact that he didn't do anything, was the most libertarian. Like do
Yeah.
nothing. He was basically president do nothing man.
No,
I guarantee like something bad happened from that though. Like they're like, oh, we need to give the vice president more power or something, and I don't know.
Wouldn't he just becomes the
Find out
president.
more on Howie's history.
Yeah, I'll think of something by the
I
time.
like how and Howie's history lessons often end with I don't know. Professor Snowden.
What's
I don't know.
What's on the docket today? I don't know.
That's a answer on the final essay. Just I know. I don't know.
All answers are D. I don't know.
And then who was the guy who was staunchly against the central bank? Was that Andrew Jackson?
Yes.
Yes.
So there's a lot of
tough
awesome
one.
stuff about him, except for then he started the whole Trail of Tears thing.
Yeah,
And-
so Andrew Jackson doesn't sound too bad. He ended the first central bank of the United States. That's cool. And then you get to the whole Native American forced removal, which had actually turned into genocide thing, and that kind of hurts the libertarian cred a little.
Yeah, but it's like, do we look at that like we do like, well, Thomas Jefferson set up some great standards for us, but he also was a slave owner. Is genocide worse than owning slaves? I don't know.
It's a great question.
It's hard to look at these
Well,
people.
I mean, would you rather be dead or enslaved? And I'm not actually sure. Dead might actually be better. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it depends who the owner was.
Depends who the owner is, ultimately.
But my second most libertarian president is Martin Van Buren, who worked in he was Jackson's Secretary of State, then he was his vice president and became president after him. And he actually, I mean, the Trail of Tears stuff, that was all Jackson's idea. But then Van Buren carried it out in his presidency, which is totally awful.
Yeah,
But
Van Buren is tough. Sorry, go ahead.
But there's so many other good things about him. He was like against like foreign involvement. He wouldn't annex Texas because he thought it was going to cause like a war with Mexico. He didn't want to have any part with. Like there were two things that came up where issues with Canada where we could have almost gone to war with Britain again that he kept us out of. He's for like free markets, sound money, less regulation, all the kind of stuff, like all this awesome stuff. But then you also force these Native Americans to I don't know where they went from, like Missouri to Oklahoma or something. And I guess they wouldn't let them like stop or rest or like take care of the sick or anything. So like 4,000 people maybe died, I think.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. And he is a tough one, as you're laying out here. He, in the Panic of 1837, he refused to get the government involved and just let the free market work itself out. So from the libertarian economic sense, laissez-faire, yada yada, fantastic. But again, he enacted the Trail of Tears, so you can't really say that's libertarian. But in his defense, he did inspire the Van Buren boys.
That's what I was doing. No one recognized it.
I've never heard.
looking at
What's
the
the Van
video.
Buren boys?
I was
I've
distracted
never
by
heard of them.
Howie trying to make points.
That's a Seinfeld reference. It's
Oh,
like-
I never heard of it.
yeah. The Van
Of
Buren
Seinfeld, there's a popular show. You should look into it. Did pretty well.
I'll go with Calvin Coolidge. Done. That's all I have to say about it.
Is
Cool
that your
Cal.
number? Is that your
All right.
number one?
Show's over.
Silent Cal.
Silent Cal. I think he was called. Oh, he did. They did call him Silent Cal.
Yeah.
In my notes,
Van-
I even have that written down. I call him Cool Cal because I think it sounds
Cool
better.
Cal. Cool as Cal down. Yeah. And also, how much cooler of a name can you get than Calvin? Calvin and Hobbes. The black guy I was friends with in college, also Calvin. There you go.
There's two Calvins. So
yeah, you remember
cool.
Calvin? Remember
He
Calvin?
worked, he worked at Hooters with you, right?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
That's when we met. We were clicks together at Hooters.
So let's dig into Cal for a minute, because I believe he was around, and there was a little mini recession before the Great Depression that he didn't act on, despite calls, I believe, for him to do. Or I'm thinking of Hoover. I'm sorry, I'm mixing some people up. That was actually, I believe, during Hoover, who actually did do things and is known as not doing things. But Cal stayed off and didn't. He was. He was basically one kind of free market president surrounded by big government tax and spenders on both sides of him. Theodore Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, Herbert Hoover, FDR. Calvin Coolidge is the only one in there that not only did he generally support like libertarian economic policies, but he also spoke from his pulpit and tried to get people to change how they thought government should work, to kind of change the ideas of government, almost like what you would picture a Ron Paul president being, where you think he'd be out there all the time just trying to get people to think differently about government. And that's something that Calvin Coolidge did with his pulpit. So I think not only did he have pretty good hands-off policies on things, but he also was active as a president in trying to sort of change people's perception of government. So I think that gets him big-time bonus points with me.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's all right. I can't wait to talk about I can't wait to talk about the number one most libertarian president, though. But I'll hold off. I'll wait on that one.
I'll add one thing. Jefferson's definitely up there too, just because I know people knock him for certain things, including like this whole thing about him owning slaves, of course, is not great. But he also tried to free the slaves multiple times.
That's generally a bad point when you own another person and say you're a libertarian.
But here's what people don't realize: that, or like, for some reason, all these assholes that are like social justice warriors, like we need to take down his monuments, is that he actually tried to free the slaves, and he put several bills through in Virginia that all got voted down. But he tried to do it several times. Now you could say he could free his own, and the argument there is, I guess.
Well, if you free your own, they can become slaves again.
Exactly. He's like, I could free them, but they're just going to go somewhere else and be, like you'd have to make them free men and then transport them where they'd be safe and all this other shit. So I don't know.
I was thinking about Jefferson the other day when oh man, why is my name I'm blanking right now?
Why is my name?
What's
Howie?
No. Who's the guy? Oh, who's the actor? Who's the actor from
history?
Who's the actor from Taken?
Liam Neeson.
Oh, that was so funny.
Yeah, right. So if people don't know the story, apparently a friend of his was raped, and he found out it was by a black guy, and he was furious, and he was like stalking, trying to like hope like a black person started something to them so he could kill them.
Like when he was younger, not this.
Yeah, when he was younger. I mean, it was brave of him to open up about this and realize he was wrong. But
why would you even talk about it though? It's like in the middle of an interview, he's just like, oh yeah, I want to kill a black guy.
Yeah.
No, but people are acting like, Liam Neeson's racist. It's like, no, he's saying I was ignorant and stupid to react that way, to have that emotional reaction, and now I have learned that is a bad way. So it's like he was, so he should be commended for.
Next question,
yeah.
Mr.
No.
Mr. Neeson. Also, can you tell us about I also keep a Chinese man in my basement.
So someone was trying to say like, no, he's not racist. I've seen him kissing this black actress, and he's like way into it. He like really loves black women, and so that made me think
you could be racist and still love
right. So that made me think
women.
of Jefferson owning slaves and having sex with them. It's like, well, a lot of people own slaves and have sex with them. It's like, I think.
Oh, and he definitely did.
I think we probably say they were still racist because they're owning people, and it's. So I don't know
if
if that
possibly consider that sex may not be consensual since they are a slave.
Right.
It might have been. I don't know. But in the context, it's kind of like if someone sleeps with a police officer while they're being detained. It's like, is it really? Can you even call it consensual, even if they said yes?
If they wanted to.
Sure, but
like if
it's probably because they want to get out of being held by the police officer and want their kidnapping to end.
Like if this was like opposite world and you got pulled over by like a really hot policewoman and she was going to give you a ticket and you're like, ma'am, if I do you, will you let me off? And like, it's a win-win, but it's the same thing.
Well, you have to do it. You have to do it in a sneaky way that you're like, I'm sorry, I can't read your badge. Can you leave? Is your name officer? I'll eat your pussy if you let me have this ticket. Am I saying that right?
I can't. I'm not good at reading, but I think is that what it
says?
You take your hat off and let your locks like flow all over. And then
I would be like why? Whatever was I doing wrong, officer? I'm glad Howie recognizes the sex appeal of my locks and why everyone is sad that they're not showing right now.
No.
I'm working at it myself. It's going to take years, though, I feel like.
The problem, you want to grow your hair long?
Yeah. I've given up every time I've ever tried. But I'm going to try.
That's the problem. You got to go through a really shitty phase to get there. That's why I gave up several times before.
So, I mean, I'm married though. I don't think she's going to leave me going through the in-between stage.
Not as long as you don't wake her up on the way to bed. That's an inside joke.
Yeah,
for Patreon supporters.
Patreon members, yeah. Join our Patreon and you'll understand all these jokes.
You'll get Howie's history and you get the inside jokes. I actually think that would be a funny podcast. We should do Howie's history.
We should.
Let's talk off the air about it. All right, moving along. We're not really moving along. Just keep talking.
I wanted to see if any of you bring up the actual most libertarian president. So keep going.
I'm trying to get there. Let's find out. Well, so you don't buy that it was William Henry Harrison because he died after 31 days. You're not calling him number one.
Yeah, I wouldn't even count him.
All right, let's try another one. What about my boy Zachary, not Zach Morris Taylor?
No, not bad, but not the best.
Well, he only lived for about a year. So, like William Henry Harrison, he didn't do a whole lot. He signed like a treaty, which it's an interesting treaty with the UK, which prevented either the US or the UK from owning the Nicaragua Canal, from seizing it. So that's, not stealing something land-wise is a good thing to do. And he wanted to prevent slavery from spreading to the South. So he opposed the Compromise of 1850 on the grounds that it helped spread slavery to the southwest of the United States. So and that's pretty much like all that I can find that he did. He didn't do much again because he wasn't even alive for much more than a year after he was elected. So he doesn't seem too bad. I would rank him somewhere in the Libertarian presidents.
Oh yeah, maybe like
wasn't Grover Cleveland supposedly pretty big?
Ooh, there you go. He is the best. We
finally found Howie's favorite. All right, Howie, since you're a proponent, why don't you tell us why?
If you want to talk about someone doing stuff, he vetoed 414 bills, which I think at like his time, that was more than like every president before him.
Shit, that's like Gary Johnson, New Mexico governor levels.
Yeah, and I would rather have the corpse Grover Cleveland be president than Gary Johnson, I think. But
if you had to choose a corpse, if you had to choose a corpse, would you use the 200-year-old
I would take either. I kind of like Gary. I like
Gary too. I just don't like Gary.
His mistake was not the Aleppo thing. It was making Bill Welch his vice president. Enough about that. Let's talk more about Grover.
So look at this. How much would the news kill him for this? He vetoed a pension bill for the military for injuries if they were not caused by military service, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Veto that.
Perfect
but
sense.
People their heads would blow out. They're like, oh, he doesn't love our military.
And then there was a big drought in Texas, and they're like, oh, we should give all this money to the farmers. And he's like, nope, don't think so. Actually, what he said was
doing business.
I actually pulled up the quote so I could tell you what he said about this. He said
he was actually a Democrat back when you could have small government Democrats.
He said, I can find no warrant for such an appropriation in the Constitution, and I do not believe that the power and duty of the general government ought to extend to the relief of individual suffering. And he said, the friendliness and charity of our countrymen can always be relied upon to relieve their fellow citizens in misfortune. So he wouldn't do it.
Not too shabby. He also fought against the spoils system, basically against cronyism, against pay to play, so to speak. And he reduced the number of overall government workers during his time. And he opposed imperialism. He opposed, going overseas and engaging in military action. So this is sounding good to me. I'm buying your arguments.
He didn't want to get involved in the Congo. He was like against imperialism, like he wouldn't annex Hawaii.
What were they trying to do in the Congo in the 1800s?
I have no idea. I just know he didn't want to go there. But the Republicans at the time wanted to like expand like everywhere.
Like, we must go to the Congo. It's the next place. It's the next new spot that we.
But I guess we had a chance to annex Hawaii at the time, and he said no, and wouldn't do it. Apparently, we did at some other future period. But
he thought the Congo was the next Hawaii.
What did he say?
Hold on, I have a great fact about Grover Cleveland. It says the Puritan training didn't stick with Cleveland. As a young bachelor and lawyer in Buffalo, he was known for enjoying good lager, good music, good food, and not necessarily good women.
Yeah,
I love this guy.
So besides being very libertarian, it's pretty cool. So
he would be on the show. He
gets elected president as a bachelor, and then like right after that, it's like, man, I can get anybody. And apparently, who he chose was like a 19-year-old girl, even though he was way older. And at first, America's like, this is outrageous, but then everyone's like,
they're like, this is outrageous, but legal. So,
but then everybody liked her. They're like, she's pretty cool though. So that's good for him. So everybody was happy. And so he won like one term and then he lost re-election, but he won the popular vote. He lost the electoral college, and him and his wife were leaving. They told all the staff, they're like, don't move any of the furniture, keep everything where it's at. We're going to be back in 4 years. And they were. So he was the only president to serve 2 like non-consecutive terms. So we were talking about I pulled up some quotes by him. One of them had to do with the non-intervention stuff. I'm trying to find it. He said we should never get caught up in conflict with any foreign state unless attacked or otherwise provoked. Which pretty good policy, if you ask me.
Seems reasonable.
He did get involved in one thing that I would oppose, though. He was against imperialism, and he didn't like the British trying to do it in like the Caribbean and stuff. And I think I don't know the details, but I guess we got involved trying to discourage him from that. Nobody's perfect, but he was also for like sound money. At the time, he was for the gold standard, but they were trying to like, oh no, let's add silver in there too, and let's start making all these silver coins and stuff. And he's like, nope, gold.
I like he was also reading now. It's like he was super against tariffs. He's like, he was rooted in his belief that they unfairly benefited certain industries, unfairly taxed consumers by raising prices. Like, yeah, nailed it.
The reason I even looked into him was because Ron Paul had his picture up in his office, and I was like, I'm like, if Ron Paul likes this president enough to put his picture up in his office, I better look into this guy. I said, oh yeah, vetoed 414 bills.
And has anyone ever been taught any class where Grover Cleveland is more than like a passing mention?
Nope. Footnote.
Yeah, exactly. So,
if they say anything, it's the only president to serve 2 non-consecutive terms. That would be the only thing they would ever say.
Yeah. He like pulled the country out of the Panic of 93, right?
Yeah.
That was William Henry Harrison was getting all basically fucked up the whole economy, and then he came in and came back.
Well, all he did was die and do nothing. That fucked up the economy?
Yeah.
I don't know. It says Harrison's inane policies led to economic train wreck. According to Lawrence Reed, I don't know who this guy is, some libertarian economist.
Harrison was alive for 31 days as a president. What could he have even done?
No, that can't be Harrison. Harrison beat.
Hold on, let me.
Harrison beat Cleveland, and then Cleveland beat Harrison.
Oh yeah, no, he served. Okay, I'm sorry. Oh no, that's right. Hold on. He died of pneumonia. He died of pneumonia 31 days into his term, thereby serving the shortest tenure.
William Henry Harrison.
Yes.
He didn't get his flu vaccine because all the anti-vaxxers were saying, "Don't do it, don't do it."
So this thing says he lost to Harrison, then he beat him in a 3-way race 4 years later. So who the hell?
Maybe Harrison was president later on.
No.
Harrison did nothing after he was president because he was dead.
Christ.
So the last thing he did was be president.
Was there another Harrison?
When he was alive was before that.
It sounds like a common name, so I wouldn't.
Right,
well,
Rico's
no
not
time
here for his
like
facts.
real time to look at this.
So hey, an interesting fact about my number
Welcome
2, Van Buren. His first language was not English; it was Dutch. I do not think today. I don't think today in the 2000s that we would elect a president whose first English language was in English. If it was like an English as a second language, I don't think we could do that now. But apparently, we would do it back in the like early days. That just seems strange to me.
Hold on. So it was Benjamin Harrison.
There you go. Wrong Harrison.
I've never heard of Benjamin Harrison. Is this a new president?
This is the Mandela effect because I don't remember this guy at all.
I've never heard of Benjamin Harrison.
Why did they insert this guy?
Trump is 45, right? I feel like in almost 40 years, I should have been able to learn about 45 people. I probably know about 15 presidents.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about the good ones. Who do you think the worst are?
Well, Howie, I was gonna save that for after the commercial break, but let's just wrap up the good presidents talk because I think we agree that none of them are in the last 50 years. Brian might make an argument for Trump. I don't know if you're still making that argument or not.
Oh,
but,
I am definitely still making an argument for Trump.
So were you the same person who was anti-genocide?
We already had this discussion where the Yemen thing is
it's kind of a mark against Trump.
It's a little problematic.
It is. He didn't start it, but he's not trying to help finish it in any way. But still, considering all the other things and all the other the actions he's taken with the regulations and tax cuts. Refusing to, until this executive order declaring a state of emergency, which I'm not a fan of. But, he had
I would hope you're not.
back to Congress rather than try to take executive actions. So, at least for my lifetime, he is probably the most libertarian.
Yeah. If the discussion was best president in our lifetimes, I would say Trump.
Yeah, better than Reagan, because Reagan is also Well, I believe he is falsely.
Reagan was all
libertarian.
talk.
Yeah, Reagan's.
Well, he
bullshit.
did slash taxes massively when he first came into office. He later did raise other taxes like the payroll tax, and he's kind of a mixed bag on that.
The whole bringing in cocaine to give to black people and
That-
working with
a little bit of an issue. Sure.
legal wars. That's a black mark.
But what shit are we going to know about Trump's behind the scenes shit 20 years from now? That's all stuff that came out
Nothing.
later on.
If the Mueller's
There's no possible way there's going to be anything we don't know about because someone is leaking everything.
Yeah.
Did you guys know, along with emergency declarations, the president gets like secret executive orders? So he could be putting all these secret executive orders out that who the fuck knows what's happening. Hopefully it's like arrest Hillary Clinton, all these people, and execute them.
I mean, at best you can you can definitely make a case that Trump is less. I'm not even gonna say less bad than Obama because I think he's worse than Obama on certain things when it comes to foreign policy and that sort of thing. But not necessarily worse either. If he actually pulls troops out, he'll be way better. But that hasn't happened yet. So while he's all talk, he's no different than Obama. While he's just talking about it, he's exactly the same.
He didn't start
I'm not
like 5 more wars like Obama did, though.
Well, I think, and maybe I'm a little off here. I think the worst thing about Obama was the whole starting this class warfare, pitting people against each other. I don't remember when I was little, everyone just hating anyone who had money and saying, oh, you only pay 50% of your income in taxes, you should pay more. And now it's, if you have any money, any success, then you're somehow evil. And that was started with Obama.
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, he played into identity politics. But also, let's not forget the massive spying apparatus that he oversaw. And
all right, well, now we're wading into the worst libertarian president category, which we'll get to. So why don't we wrap up the good libertarian president talk and try to why don't we just try to get together like a top 3 ranking or something like that? That sound good? Because I'm buying Howie's arguments pretty strongly on Grover Cleveland here, so I'm happy to put him at number 1. Do you guys have any thoughts?
We didn't mention this. The Democrats at the time, his Democrats were called the Bourbon Democrats. Those are the only kind.
100% number 1 now. Now there's no question. I'm in on Cleveland. Everybody else?
Yep.
Sounds good.
Feel free to. And then
all right.
I would say if we're doing like a top 3, I mean, based on the glossing over of history that we've just done here through these guys. I'm a big fan of Calvin Coolidge, especially because of the fact that he openly used the presidency as a pulpit to discuss why government should be doing less. So I think that's even more important than maybe enacting policy. So I'm going to float him as a number 2. Any objections?
I'll take him in the top 3. He's my number 3. I go Cleveland, Van Buren, Coolidge.
Oh, see, I had Zach Taylor in the top 3 too, but that's just because he hardly did anything, and the only things he did seemed pretty good.
Well, you know what? I could be convinced because I didn't realize that Van Buren was involved in the Trail of Tears till today.
Yeah, I think, and I didn't really realize it until I researched it because everyone associates Jackson with it, but I think that's going to push him down for me. I think I'm going to have to take little Martin, despite the fact that he did inspire the Van Buren boys, which I do think is a wonderful thing. I'm going to have to knock him down for the Trail of Tears enforcement. For the whole genocide thing.
Are we going to knock Trump down from the Trail of Tears too because of the joke about Elizabeth Warren?
Maybe. No, you're allowed to joke about things.
Okay. You can joke about it. As long as you're not responsible for thousands of Native American deaths.
As long as you don't do the genocide, it is okay to make a flippant remark about it, I think. All right, this is the part of the show where Brian yells at his wife. Which I'm not editing out.
I was yelling at my dogs.
Oh, and you're
yelling at my
I
wife.
don't believe that. What? Who says what to their dog and then waits for a response?
What did you say to me?
Dude,
Amazon package got delivered.
You said woof?
You're going ape shit. And then I was like, well, what is it? She said even if it's for me, she's like, I'm going to open it. I'm like, all right, well, hopefully it's not my anal plug.
Your dog was going to open it?
Yeah, I train my dog to open my packages and then bring them into me and set them up. He puts batteries in the controllers.
I yell at my dog too. It's even worse though because she's deaf.
So you're really not yelling at anything.
Or sometimes my wife will be like, "What did you say?" And like, no, I was just talking to our dog, our deaf dog. It's like not only am I just talking to a dog, but it's a deaf dog.
You should teach it a sign like Coco the monkey.
I did. I taught her sign language. I taught her my made-up sign language, not like real sign language.
I think didn't we just talk about this?
Coco the monkey?
No, Howie's made up sign language.
I don't think so.
That might have been a Mandela effect.
Did you dream it?
I don't know.
Or it was on the Mandela Effect episode of Conspiracy Corner. One of the
I'm pretty sure it was. I've heard it. Whatever.
All right. Well, I feel pretty good about a top 3 of Grover Cleveland, Coolidge, and Zach Taylor. Are there any objections to this?
Nope, it's fine.
Great.
I'll take it.
I like it. A fierce debate has ensued, and I think we may have a fiercer one maybe after the break, so we're going to do that right now. Hey friends, I got to take a quick pause here to tell you about another great libertarian podcast out there. It's called Free Man Beyond the Wall, hosted by the artist formerly known as Mance Rayder, now known simply by his real name of Pete Raymond. And I gotta tell you, Pete is a machine. This guy brings you a new episode of his own every single Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and he has done some absolutely fantastic in-depth interviews. He's had on everybody from Ron Paul to Thaddeus Russell to Phil Labonte, the lead singer of All That Remains, a very diverse group of guests, not always libertarians. He also did a great show with a Washington, D.C. insider lobbyist revealing a lot of the dirt that goes on behind the scenes in DC. He has done so many interviews that I have just said, darn, I wish I did this one myself. So I really do want to highly recommend checking out Free Man Beyond the Wall. You can find it over at freemanbeyondthewall.com, as well as iTunes, Stitcher, and all those fancy podcatchers out there. All right, and be sure to check out the podcast that you just heard me mention in a pre-taped interview, but in a pre-taped promo. But Mance Rayder is doing great work. I keep forgetting that he has a real name now, and it's Pete Raymond and not Mance Rayder. So, which is not nearly as intimidating. I was much more frightened of him before.
Pete Raymond was the reject name that they were going to use in Ghostbusters, and then they decided. Pete Raymond, that's a stupid sounding name. Now, Venkman, you got something.
You guys follow like libertarian Twitter a lot, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm on the Twitter. I only follow Howie on Twitter.
So Jen the Libertarian is Pete Raymond, Mance Rayder's wife, and and her podcast is pretty good too. And
I believe that's public information.
I used to love following her on Twitter. I'm like, man, she's a cool chick. I'm like, oh, she's got a podcast. I was like, holy shit, she's married to Mance Rayder. I don't know.
Yeah, no, her tweets are. I follow her Twitter actively. She has a lot of good tweets and a lot of good content.
Probably the most libertarian couple that exists.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know any others, so.
Well, what do we know about Ron?
His wife has got to be fairly libertarian, you know.
She does. Carol Paul does not have a libertarian podcast.
No, when Carol Paul starts a libertarian podcast, she can talk.
She could put a good cookbook, but no libertarian podcast.
It would be funny if you called Ron Paul and he's like, "Oh, you want me on the podcast again?" He's like, "No, really wanted your wife on the podcast."
Actually, that was a really good idea, Mark.
And he's like, "No, I heard you guys saying that we were not the most libertarian couple, so
dude, you should have her on to talk about what it's been like to be married to Ron Paul."
That's a good idea, actually. I think that is a great idea.
What's it like?
Maybe I should have her on for a special it's already past Valentine's Day. Maybe next year for Valentine's Day, I should have Ron and Carol Paul on.
I don't know if I'd wait on it. They're a little older.
Okay, we don't need to talk about why you think I should wait on. Okay,
I'll tell you this.
That's a little too morbid for me.
Ron, you don't have time to take a message. You might be dead. Borrow. Get her on now.
I was talking to my wife the other night. We were hammered out of our minds. We went to this local fancy bar. As I mentioned to Rico, the oxymoron of a fancy bar in Hawthorne. But we got hammered.
Doesn't exist.
And we usually never talk politics just because she usually doesn't want to. But talking politics with her hammered, and she was all just laying out libertarian philosophies on shit. I don't even have to brainwash her. She's just into it. She just naturally thinks it. So,
or she just doesn't want to get yelled at.
Yeah.
You idiot! Didn't you listen to bar talk?
Do you know what's weird? Talking about politics used to be boring. No one wanted to do it. But now it's if you heard about Virginia's governor, blackface KKK hood, he wants to kill babies, and he tried to do a moonwalk, and it's the other guy, lieutenant governor, multiple rapes. The guy after them's blackface. It's I've never had politics be so crazy and interesting.
It's so entertaining right now.
I was talking with a liberal friend of mine the other day, and he was talking about Ocasio-Cortez's plan. Mm-hmm. He's like, "Well, how are they going to pay for everything?" And I'm like, that's the whole fucking part of the argument against democratic policies to begin with. Why are you a Democrat? If you could actually ask that question.
She said how they'll pay for it. They're just going to print the money.
Yeah, print the money. And then immediately it comes hyperinflation we've never seen in this country.
I am so glad Mitch McConnell is calling for a vote on the Green New Deal.
Oh, it's hilarious.
That's this is the first time I'm not upset that he's a Fayatah.
So if they just printed money, do you think she knows that you don't necessarily have to print money? Because if you did physically have to print money, wouldn't that just make the Green New Deal go up in smoke, since every tree would have to be cut down?
Oh, or I mean, just even to mention the fact that if you're gonna like do all this stuff, say even just one part, say you're gonna build all these freaking windmills, see how much of a carbon impact it's gonna make building them, all the like plants building all this shit.
Oh god!
What about
down and rebuilding every
retrofitting-
goddamn
Well, plus it
building?
will kill all the birds. All the birds in the country will be dead because
Well, the birds are fake anyway, so that's
500
fine.
birds a year.
What about
The winged cats will take over.
rebuilding every building?
Wait, are birds currently keeping cats at bay? Is that your argument? I think you have things flipped around there.
No, cats actually kill like 10 billion birds a year.
That's what I'm saying.
Only in America.
And they've
The
got
cats,
the-
the
10
cats might
billion
die 'cause
birds
they
a
lose
year.
their food source.
Yes.
They have winged cats now. The birds aren't safe anywhere.
Google it. I'm pretty sure I'm right.
10 billion birds a year are killed by cats in America.
Just in
On
America.
the next Howie's history.
How many million is that in
Like
each
that.
state? What is 10 billion divided by 50? I don't know.
I'm
Well, it
not
seems
doing that, man.
200 million?
We're definitely not doing Howie's math class.
Yeah.
No, that's Brian. It's McWilliams math. Come on.
Yeah.
We only do shows that alliterate. Fact.
So as we jump into talking about the worst presidents from a libertarian perspective, something that came up with the good, I think we need to kind of break into. Let's look at like from a historical perspective and our lifetime perspective.
Sure. Why don't you just host the show? Sounds great. No, I think that's a fine idea, actually. I just, because I think to your point, I think the two least libertarian presidents are the two prior to Trump. Would anybody
In our lifetimes?
Really?
Hell
Worse
yeah.
in our lifetimes at least,
Oh,
for sure.
Oh yeah. If we're talking about our lifetimes, I'd say hell
I
yeah.
don't know about
Barack
ever yet,
Obama
but
and George W. Bush are
Yeah.
freaking awful.
Well,
Yes.
Clinton was a big piece of shit too. I mean, look at all the criminal justice stuff that he put into play. The war on drugs ramping it up.
I agree.
Yeah.
I feel like every president in our lifetime got worse and worse until Trump. Now I was like, oh wait, we might get a little better. I'm not sure. I got to wait and see, but
But it still could get worse. I mean, we can't gloss over the fact that civilian and drone related deaths are much higher than under Obama. We can't just gloss over that as libertarians. So I can't put him in any kind of, I can say he's better on some things for sure. He's better on criminal justice than Clinton or Obama for that matter.
yeah, I mean, if he does what he says, if we pull out of Afghanistan and Syria, then I'm like, yeah, he's great.
If he legalizes marijuana and actually ends like an actual war where we no longer have troops in at least like one place, then I'll say, okay,
Although
we can
he did just put in
talk about
George
him as
W.
better.
Bush's piece of shit attorney general. They brought him back.
Yeah, every time you think something good, you know, he surrounds himself with more neocons. He's got Elliot Abrams in there ready to send him to lead the freedom movement in Venezuela. You know what? Elliot Abrams is responsible for every bad thing in the 80s under Reagan. Supporting the Iran-Contras. Yeah, all this stuff. Elliot Abrams is terrible, neocon, and should not be anywhere near any sort of thing that we're trying to proclaim as a freedom movement. We shouldn't have anyone near Venezuela, but we certainly shouldn't have Elliot fucking Abrams near there. So
I actually liked watching Ilhan Omar, that Muslim congresswoman.
I love any
tripped on him.
challenge to the idea that Israel cannot be challenged on its policies.
That was so aggravating watching the response to that. Like fucking Ben Shapiro is such an ass clown with this when it comes to Israel, where he's like, "Oh, we're talking about money and shekels," and it's like, no, she's not saying that the Jews are all about money and that's why she's talking about fucking AIPAC's influence and to a broader extent, I would say the military-industrial complex.
Well, isn't there a line in All About the Benjamins about Hebrews?
Yeah.
Song? I don't think it's totally unrelated.
If she knows about it, I would not be surprised if it's anti-Semitic, but what her tweets said on their face are fine, I think.
Yeah.
And APEC should get called out. Actually, I think this is really funny. So I have to take this training at work, where like there's questions like, oh, what did this guy do illegal when he like let information go or some shit, you know? And one of them was like somebody gave information to APEC, and I chose a choice where it was like giving information to a foreign entity, and it's like wrong. I'm like, are you serious? We're gonna sit here and pretend that AIPAC is not a foreign entity. I know it's like supposedly American, but like, come on, we're in the intelligence community.
Well,
That's
Israel
not true.
cyber attacks us constantly anyway, so I'm sure they have all the info already. So really, there's nothing you could leak to them they wouldn't already know about.
Isn't that one of the most ridiculous things about the whole Russia investigation, pretending they meddled, when how much money has flowed in, do you think, from Saudi Arabia and Israel, just to name two?
Those are the two top.
Somehow into whatever campaign election funds there are for either.
Or to the Clinton Global Foundation.
Yeah. I mean,
Who is the last person that got elected that wasn't supported by Israel and Saudi Arabia?
Zero.
Probably-
I guess there was a last person somewhere.
We may have to go back to Grover
Jimmy
Cleveland,
Carter.
probably.
Nobody in our lifetime.
Yeah.
Maybe Jimmy Carter.
Did you know Jimmy Carter had a national emergency? It's still going on now. I couldn't believe how many have been declared.
National emergencies don't end.
Still going on.
Well, why
there's a Jimmy Carter one from '79 that's still ongoing. That has
what is that?
Sanction people. They declare national emergencies and then sanction countries. It's like, why is that a national emergency?
Well, it was when the Iranian hostage crisis took place, but like I don't think we're supposed to be like doing business with Iran because of Jimmy Carter's thing 40 years ago.
Well, I know the U.S. is trying to sanction any country that's doing any business with Iran as well.
That's not very libertarian, is it?
No, it's not. Well, they've been doing that for forever too. It's just like ongoing, and it's like what, I get we're fighting with Iran, but who are we to tell other people, other countries, they can't do business with them? It's like, what the fuck?
I'm gonna call Bush worse than Obama, just to go back to this conversation here, because you could argue one is worse than the other. Bush expanded the government drastically, created the Patriot Act, invaded Iraq, total humanitarian disaster, and Afghanistan, by the way, which we're still in. But even if we said they were equal, the fact that Bush is doing all of what he's doing under the banner of I'm for small government and free markets and yada yada yada, it's that would, and also during the financial crisis that started under Bush, and he was also in what he'd do the $800 check to every American thing, and he did a lot of very anti-free market policies within the context of what was his quote? To save free markets, we have to abandon them, or something like that. So I think
tough though. Didn't it happen right at the end of his presidency?
Yeah, it was right at the end.
He pushed it, then Obama finished it. He's like, "Here's the bailout." The Bush got you. They're both, to me, in our lifetime, the top two. It's so hard for me to decide which is worse. It's like, the invasion of Iraq, the amount of troops and all the killing we were doing there was way greater.
1 million people are considered displaced from Iraq.
But all the countries that Obama destroyed afterwards, I'd have to take a hard look at what's worse.
Murder American citizens, so don't forget that one.
I'm sure Bush did too, but
but we don't know about those.
Obama's were teenagers, though.
Obama, we know for a fact that he murdered them, without any sort of efforts to even have a trial or find any pure evidence. Murdering children.
So I think we all believe in the worst possible conception of the deep state, right? As far as being in existence. So how much do you think Obama, I think he may have been genuine when he was elected to not want, and same with Trump, not wanting troops to stay in some of these countries. And someone got to them somehow and changed their mind.
Nobody wants to be Kennedy.
Some presidents might have ideals that quickly erode once they get into office. Trump has basically been boxed in. Let's just presume that Trump really wanted to bring troops home from everywhere, even if there's no moral reason. As a businessman, I think he might see this is a waste of money. This is stupid. So I can kind of believe that he does or did want to do that. But A, he's surrounding himself with neocons, so no one around him is going to actually agree with that. And B, I think this Russia thing has really served to box him in on foreign policy, which I think is one of the main motivations, besides removing him from office altogether, the main motivations of the Russia narrative, because any area that he can pull troops out of can easily be spun as this is good for Russia. This proves he's a Russian agent. Even Afghanistan, they could say, well, now Russia can have more influence over the minerals in Afghanistan. Syria, now Russia's puppet Assad. No matter any situation that he wants to pull troops out of, if we, think that might be possibly true that he really wants to do it, can easily be, spun against that narrative. And I think that's one of the motivations.
Just talking about the whole concept like that, just for a second, I was thinking about this earlier today. Just the concept that Trump, the fact that they fucking investigated Trump for being he might be an agent of Russia. It's okay, let's presume that he was an agent of Russia. Once you become the president of the United States, i.e. the most powerful man in the world, wouldn't you be like, hey, you know what? Fuck off. I don't want to be your agent anymore. I'm just going to do my own thing over here.
No, they have compromising
pictures. Why would you still be taking...
he doesn't want to see his naked pictures on the internet.
It's so fucking dumb. Oh, it's it'd be okay, yeah, you're working for the man, and then you become the owner of a $1 billion, the biggest billion company. You became Jeff Bezos overnight, and you're still fucking hucking trash.
What seems easier than colluding with Russia to become president? Just being a billionaire and not doing anything. It's not like he's down on his luck and has used this to rise to a position of extreme wealth and power. He already had anything he needed, and that's why, to an extent, I kind of buy the idea that Trump believes in some of what he says. Like he wants. I don't think a lot of what he says is good, and I don't really believe he thinks anything about immigration. I actually think the wall thing is just literally just a political thing he does. I don't think he hardly believes any of that shit.
Yeah,
I think you're right about a lot of the deep state stuff that you were talking about, though. I mean, like the whole thing with Comey when he first meets him, coming in and being like, "Hey, President, we've got this dossier on you, saying all this stuff."
It's like we don't know if it's true, but it's not looking good.
That's
so
J. Edgar Hoover level like blackmail shit,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Trump's not going to be blackmailed by that. But like then we hear stories of like
only
Mattis.
with JFK, they really did have photos of him.
Like
with
Mattis
other
tells
chicks,
him like,
so.
"Oh, we want to pull out of Afghanistan or whatever," and Mattis is like, "Well, I don't recommend that. And if you do that and anything goes wrong afterwards, we're going to say it's all on you. We told you not to. It's all your fault." And I mean, we'll have to see if Trump can break this. I mean, this is the entrenched military industrial complex and this deep state, these unelected people that are just there always, no matter who wins the election.
But he keeps, even if he pulls out of Afghanistan and Syria, it sounds like he's going to double whatever they do by going into Iran. Like
Well, if he
won't
actually goes
stop.
into Iran, he'll vault to the top of worst presidencies.
Yeah, if he
doesn't
goes into
stop
Iran
talking
or
about it.
Venezuela, then he doesn't get no credit for leaving Afghanistan or Syria if that happens.
Yeah, if you end one and start one,
It cancels it out.
Yeah,
Well,
you're
that's what
not
I'm
getting
saying.
credit.
Look, that's what I was saying on ELL a few episodes ago. It's like you can't, like the military industrial complex, you can't just quit doing the heroin. It's like you quit the heroin and now we're going over to Colombia and Venezuela to do the cocaine. You know,
I can kind of get like in this conspiracy scenario, they're in somewhere and people are just like not letting them get out. They have leverage over them, but to then get into a whole new war, which is way bigger if you got into a war with Iran, way bigger than what they're in now. There would be
Like
so
Venezuela,
many
you wouldn't
casualties.
to go in there at all, though. You know, it's like Iran, of course, is one.
I don't think they're going to have to do anything in Venezuela. It sounds like they've leveraged it enough where they can get what they want. But Venezuela, the reading about the election, it sounds like the U.S. is so much shadier than anything they're accusing. It was a perfectly legitimate election. It wasn't close. The guy they don't like won easily. And it's just like, they don't want it.
That it was a legitimate election, but I still,
legitimate enough.
This like minor politician in the U.S. is like, you're president now. Go have at it.
The guy, right, Madero, didn't he invite the UN to monitor the elections?
Oh yeah, even the Carter, what's it called? Like this, Jimmy Carter has some organization that monitors elections, and they said it was fairer than U.S. elections.
Yeah, there was no Black Panthers.
The guy the U.S. is recognizing as President Guaido, or however you say his name, like he didn't even run. He's never got a single vote, and we're saying he's the president.
He pulled out because he wanted to make the election illegitimate because he knew he had no chance of winning, and so he's like, "Well, if I just don't participate in the election, I can claim illegitimacy, and I can get the U.S. to back me and just install me." Oh, what a joke of an election!
Play. You just say it wasn't legitimate, and you get out in the streets and you protest and protest and protest until something happens.
Well, they tried to do that here, but it didn't work.
They're trying to do it here right now.
Really, if they didn't wear those pussy hats, they might have been able to do it.
They're still trying to do it here now.
Yeah,
I guarantee you, once the Mueller report comes out, it's probably going to say, "Yeah, there wasn't any Russian collusion." Then the intelligence security is going to start a new investigation.
Yeah, that already did come out.
The commission said that they're like, well, we didn't find anything.
Well, I believe it was a Senate panel.
The Senate Intelligence Committee found nothing. We're still waiting for Mueller's report, and then the House with Schiff and them, they're going to start their own investigation because they're not going to like the results, and it's going to drag on forever.
It seems like no matter what the subject, we end up having to talk about Donald Trump for 20 minutes every time.
Well, yeah.
Well, it is the most fascinating presidency that we could ever learn about, I think. There's so much nuance to it. There's a legitimate coup attempt.
I thought it was just Orange Man bad. End of story.
I don't understand how McCabe and Comey aren't both. I mean, literally, they should both be arrested for treason. They're trying to, especially the shit with the 25th Amendment, which I guess they're.
Well, at the very least, they should be arrested.
Don't forget Clapper and Brennan. They should be in jail.
I mean, if you're charging Roger Stone with lying, then how are Clapper, McCabe, Comey, Brennan not charged with the same thing? There's no excuse for that because what they lied about was much worse than anything Roger Stone could possibly have lied about.
By far. But I mean, literally, though,
Russian collusion was with the Democratic
you're
Party.
talking about colluding behind the scenes with other members of the deep state and talking about if you have enough votes to actually just place a sitting president. If that's not treason, what is treason?
Well, I mean, if you're trying to apply the framework of an amendment, I don't. It's not necessary. I don't think it's It's probably treason in a broad sense, but a strictly legal sense, I don't think it would be. If you can couch it in terms of, well, I think the 25th Amendment can legitimately apply. But whatever, we're off topic here.
Well,
that's where I was trying to go with this. That we're off topic.
What we forgot to get to was the historical worst presidents.
We didn't forget. We just hadn't gotten there yet.
We haven't done the present day worst presidents yet.
I think we already talked about Lincoln.
I think we just did.
I just got to throw some candidates. Maybe people think Wilson and FDR were particularly awful.
Host Howie, take it from here.
All right, history professor, take it away.
I'm trying to practice, so if I ever have my own show, I know what to do. Sorry about that.
You're practicing live on a real show?
Yes.
That's how most people get their start practicing. They
start a
podcast by practicing on another podcast.
We already talked about how much Lincoln sucks to death, but Wilson and FDR, FDR, come on. He interned Japanese citizens.
I think that's like a good debate, because if you think about the modern repressive federal government, I think Woodrow Wilson is almost the father of it.
He started all this progressive stuff. He got us into World War I. He was a big proponent of the League of Nations, which, now we have the UN, which is the replacement. But
wasn't the income tax under Wilson?
Yes. Check out the list of things that happened under Wilson that are, extremely anti-libertarian. Federal Reserve created and signed into law. Check. Income tax created and signed into law. Check. Entrance into World War I, which led to World War II. Check. He might be the worst, just based on that checklist.
And he's taught as a good president in schools.
Well, yeah, whoever does the most war and expansion of government is considered the best. That's the historical, the non-Howie's history version of things, always.
It's so funny that my history show will be some kind of made up stuff, but it'll still be more accurate than real.
Some kind of made up stuff.
It'll still be more accurate than real history class.
It's like drunk history.
President was Woodrow Wilson, who you'll remember has a robotic arm and was half puma.
I have no doubt that us rambling half informed about history is more informative than literally my high school history class.
So Second World War was teed up by First World War, but it's also because FDR forced the Japanese to attack us pretty much. And something that I recently learned listening to Thaddeus Russell's podcast was that the Holocaust, the Germans didn't start killing the Jews until the day after America got in the war. Before then, Hitler is just we want them out of this country or whatever. And then America gets in the war and it's fuck it, let's kill them. So maybe if America was never in World War II, the Holocaust wouldn't even happen.
Well, I don't understand the rationale. I don't get the connection between killing Jews and America joining the war.
I don't think it was. I think it was more of a we don't have.
Perhaps I have this wrong, but I think Thaddeus Russell said.
Well, it wasn't right away. I don't think the timeline is wrong, but I don't think the connection is there. I think it was more of a one. We're now have to fight America. We don't have the resources to kind of intern millions and millions of people. Plus, I think over the number of years that Germany was basically holding all the Jews prisoner, the hatred just kept getting greater and greater. So two things kind of merged, in my opinion. But I don't know.
I'm seeing a bit of a top five emerging in my mind, and I'm in no particular order. I'm just going to float based on the last 25 minutes or so of conversation, and then we can rank them afterwards. But I think FDR's got to be in there, as does Woodrow Wilson have to be in there. And I think we haven't talked about Monroe, but he created the Monroe Doctrine, which is basically laid the groundwork for American intervention philosophically all over the world. I think he only did the Spanish-American War. But
another thing that's taught as great in schools is the Monroe Doctrine.
Yeah,
is that the big dick theory?
Spreading American ideals across the globe.
Walk loudly and carry a big dick was, I believe, the Monroe Doctrine.
Yes,
something like that. So I think we might want to toss him in there, but not that much really happened under him. But he did certainly lay the foundation of the groundwork for more bad things to come. And I think we have to have George Bush and Obama both in the top five to me. So, and then we got to bring Lincoln back, bring the conversation back.
I think George Herbert Walker Bush may have been involved in a lot of really bad things we don't even know about.
I mean, he might have killed JFK.
There's no might have about
I think so. He's the only person that doesn't know where he was when JFK was shot.
I don't remember that day. Like,
Oh, but actually, we
Wasn't
do
a river
know
at
where
all.
he was. He was in a little town in Texas.
right. That's true, actually, which you could find on my interview with Roger Stone from way back in, I don't know, but very early on in the podcast. I'll link to it.
We got to get
We'll talk
Roger on
about
Felony Friday soon.
it. I agree. From prison, maybe. Well, he's not there yet. So
We
He's
need
been doing
Roger on
interviews,
Felony
so-
Friday, and you're going to talk to Carol Paul.
All right, we're booking the whole next year of Lions of Liberty, or next week.
And Brian should have the Fagcast on.
Well, I'm going on the Fadcast in next week. That's the Friends Against Government. Before anyone thinks that we're homophobic, and but I agree. I think we should intermingle with all the fraudulent podcasts out there that attempt to mimic us. Now, I like those guys. They're good, but they are clearly inspired by us, as they admit, and that's very nice. I'm a fan of that. Anyway, who's worse, the Fadcast or George W. Bush?
It's like we are to Ron Paul, they are to us. It's pretty
There you
good.
go.
I like it.
There you go.
I mean, hell, I did yell at people during my 100th episode to start podcasts, so can't complain about it when they do.
Yeah, well,
No.
they already started
They're
their
fine.
thing.
They're our natural allies. They're
Yeah, that's why we
Yeah.
like to fuck.
They're
Yeah.
the UK.
they hate the government. They love like cryptids, supernatural creatures, and whatnot. And
All right. Do you guys generally believe in my analysis of a top five? then?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so now
Yeah.
let's just rank them. Or do you think Lincoln should be the fifth in there somewhere, considering he did basically end any right of secession and just
Wait,
murder
wait,
people
So
in
I
jail
think with
journalists?
Lincoln
Killing more
versus
Americans than anybody.
Versus G Dubs, do you have to put any? Because the running joke against W was he's just kind of a puppet for Dick Cheney. So how much did he really like? He's just a moron, and he's puppet president. He's
To me,
all
it doesn't matter if you're doing stuff because you're a puppet or because you're in control. If you're doing the stuff, then you're doing the stuff.
wouldn't you love to see the timeline though, where George W. Bush was president, but 9/11 didn't happen? Like, what would that have been like? Probably not bad.
It's a good question.
I'm trying to remember anything notable for the first 9 months or 8 months.
He
of
did
his
like some healthcare, pharmaceutical
presidency.
expansion.
Oh, it was like Medicare Part D,
something like
right? That was the big thing.
Well, wasn't George W. Bush responsible for No Child Left Behind, which of course is a fucking horrible
Yeah, there was that. There was some
waste
not
of
great
education,
things.
money, and time.
And we're sure that's not a result of 9/11.
He did a stupid stem cell thing. That was dumb.
Yep.
Yeah. All of his stuff was annoying, but it wasn't like,
I mean, 9/11 made it worse.
Lincoln
No
level
doubt about
bad.
it.
Yeah, and then 9/11 just
Or gave
Well, that's
them
what
the
I mean.
premise to me.
like if 9/11 didn't happen and he didn't invade, like all of his stuff would have just been like he's an average bad president.
Yeah.
Who did he run against the first time?
Al Gore.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Remember
that's
that guy?
right.
Remember the whole floor.
Remember the Chads and how they hung or didn't hang, depending on who you
Here's
talk
the
to?
bigger
right.
question: Who has hotter daughters, Obama or Bush?
I think
I haven't
Obama's
seen
daughters are
Obama.
too young for me allowed to comment on still, right?
They're
Yeah.
probably like 20s now, right?
Yeah, they're like out of college.
Oh, okay. I don't know though.
Because Bush, I think, had some pretty damn hot daughters.
I'm
You know
just
what's
gonna
annoying?
say Trump's are better.
Yeah, Ivanka's very attractive.
You know what's annoying about Obama is everyone's like, just the nonstop love on Michelle Obama for if she shows up in an award show, it's like Michelle Obama stole the Grammys. Doing what exactly by existing as a progressive in a Trump presidency world?
As a giant woman of color.
Melania is my favorite first lady for sure.
Mark
Now,
is so
listen,
mad.
She's mine too because she does nothing. That's what makes
Rico
me happy.
knows me so well.
She's like, this isn't what we're supposed to talk about. How am I gonna describe this episode when you talk about Melania?
Well, we talk about all these other. We talk about the deep state and these unelected officials have so much power. The first lady is basically the same thing. She's unelected. She gets in there. They put all these idiotic, like all these education. The Michelle Obama's food thing with the lunches was fucking idiotic. So I'm glad Melania just is like, I'm just going to go read some Dr. Seuss books to kids once in a while. And otherwise,
It's
I
like,
don't
don't bully.
And, though I bet you
That's
Grover
good.
Cleveland's 19-year-old wife was pretty good too.
Yeah, she was hands off. Except for hands-on
All right,
Grover.
so instead of ranking the worst presidents, now we're going to rank best first ladies. Is that what this turned into?
Yes, that's what we're doing now. Welcome to LALDL.
Worst
Barbara,
first lady,
Barbara Bush was a terrible one.
Oh my God. Who married her?
Howie,
Nancy
high
Reagan
five.
also. That whole say no to
Oh
drunk.
yes. Yeah, oh yeah.
By far the worst first lady ever.
Boo.
She's worse than
Oh.
Michelle Obama, I'll say it.
I did. I think I was on Odie's podcast right after she died, and I was like, you know what?
Gleefully.
Like,
I did
She's
like
not
what
as
she.
great as everyone.
I did like what you said. The Jeb shouldn't be president, though.
We'll give you 1 point, Barbara. 1 point.
I'll give her that.
Does Trump have writers, or does he just think of that shit off the cuff? Because that's
I think he
amazing.
just does it off the
Low
cuff.
energy,
I
Jeb
think
Bush.
his writers would be worse than wouldn't be as funny as him. So
Yeah.
Do you guys think he'll have a nickname for Weld, or would not even ever acknowledge him?
I don't think he won't even be acknowledged.
No,
There's
I
no
agree.
reason to acknowledge this. There's not gonna be a debate. We haven't even talked about Bill Weld, but we can save that for another time.
For
We'll talk about it a bit
worst
on League of-
libertarian vice presidential candidate.
When we rank the worst libertarian vice presidential candidates next week. You guys want to come? Let's just stay on and do that as the bonus show. Worst libertarian vice presidential candidates.
Oh wait, we're doing a bonus show.
I mean, we can or we can't. I don't know.
We
Just-
can't. I just have to pee.
If you guys never stop, if we never get to the point of this show, then maybe we don't. But
I think we already discussed who are the best and the worst
Let's just
presidents
rank-
in
let's
our
just-
lifetimes and not our.
I want to do the ranking of the top 5.
My worst is Woodrow Wilson.
Yeah,
Because I think he laid the
I made a
groundwork.
pretty good case. I think the 3 points at once converging with Federal Reserve, income tax, and World War I that does land him at the number 1 spot. I'm gonna
I
say.
think
was
Lincoln
no-
should be in the top 5, though. I think Lincoln would push Bush out for me.
So, all right, where do we want to put FDR?
I put him
to me,
too.
I kind of have W. Bush and Obama linked together. I think they're like kind of next to each other, and I think, do we want to put FDR and Lincoln worse than them or not as bad?
See,
Oh,
that's why it's better to have 2 top 3s. One for like real old presidents.
top threes. What the fuck is this?
Try Wilson, FDR,
No,
Lincoln.
we're not doing multiple top lists.
We could do
Not-
we could do Wilson, FDR, and
when you have Howie's history,
Lincoln
you can have
for
like
the old
alternate
presidents,
lists.
but for our lifetime, we can have Obama, Bush, and
I like how Howie is the best interrupter, but the best at blocking interruption. Like he can just keep going no
just
matter
keep
how many
talking.
times I come in.
He just drones on.
So we're not. You do that on the first episode of Howie's history. You can have 2 different worst presidents lists.
so we're doing
on
a
this
top
show,
5.
however, we're gonna do things my way.
I can't wait till Howie grades a paper and be like, "You got an A in my category 1 scoring."
My property, but you got a D in category 2. My property rights on this program dictate that I will set the rules. How about that? Libertarian lesson for you. I personally think FDR should be number 2 because he laid the groundwork for expanding the government and entrenching programs that are still here with us today, and minor details getting us into World War II and interning Japanese and Italian. Everyone forgets about the Italians. He interned Italians too. Forget about
Mamma
that?
mia! I'm stuck in this cage.
That might not have been a bad idea, though. That might have been a good
Hey,
idea.
in fairness, if we knew about the Sopranos and all that stuff that would happen later, I'm now citing the Sopranos as history, by the way. That's like a Howie's history. And then in 1999, Tony Soprano.
I'm
killed his
picturing
daughter-in-law.
a Friends spinoff where Joey is interned in an Italian camp and he just picks up women and makes pizza.
Hey,
I'd watch that.
How you doing?
I'm picturing an alternate history where Tony Danza is in the internment camp and he becomes like the maid for the camp. And it works out
Did they
great.
make him wear blackface?
Is Ross in Auschwitz at the time? Is he a pen pal with Joey Tribbiani?
Oh my God. I think we got a Friends movie here.
Well, luckily I have a personal contact with Ross. So
Friends from
David
Camp.
Schwimmer.
That's the name of it. Friends from Camp. And one's
have
an
we ever told
internment
that
camp and
story
one's
on air, or it's been told on Degenerate?
Yeah,
Gamblers?
I thought you did. I don't
It's
know.
been on not Degenerate Gamblers because I've never listened to that and I've heard the story.
All right,
Oh,
then you
and
have
you wanna come
we
on
talk
Degenerate
offline
Gamblers,
too,
really?
you know.
What?
You don't listen to Degenerate Gamblers, and yet you insist that you want to come on it. This is why you're not allowed on.
That's no way to
Yeah.
get to win the hosts over, Howie.
And I'm not going to listen until I'm invited on.
All right, so we're slowly getting through this. We agree FDR is number 2.
Yes, agreed.
Do we agree that should Lincoln be before or after Bush and Obama? That's the question, I guess.
I would
I
say
think before.
before.
Worse.
He's
Yes.
worse.
Okay, so I'm going to say then, barring that, I'm going to say Lincoln 3, Obama 4, Bush 5. I'm sorry, no. I'm sorry, Bush is worse than Obama, I think. So I'm going to put Bush 4.
I'm going to put
Obama
Bush
5.
ahead of Lincoln because Bush killed more people than Lincoln.
Did he kill?
What about
Did he?
Wasn't there a million
how many
Iraqis?
people died in
Wasn't there 500,000 Americans
I
though?
thought the Civil War was 500,000.
But that's more Americans. Not that I care.
I don't think that American lives are more precious than Iraqi lives.
So are you
I
counting
agree.
Iraqi lives? Are all Iraqi
Iraqi lives
related
matter.
deaths?
I count every life as one, not like
But no. I'm saying even
Twice
under
as much.
Obama, does that get attributed to Bush? Or you saying just in the 8 years of Bush, that many people
I think before Obama, we already had like 1 million Iraqis dead from either direct conflict or just results of like the country going to shit from our invasion. I don't know. I could be wrong, but
I would say Bush is ahead of Obama for the same reason I put Woodrow first, is because he laid the groundwork. So Bush kind of laid the groundwork for involvement in Afghanistan and Iraq, and Obama really just continued it.
I mean, Obama just continued the Bush doctrine.
I once voted for Obama over Bush because I thought he would end the wars.
Yeah, well, you were wrong.
That's amazing since they never ran against each other. But
yeah, I know.
Really?
Good point.
Yeah.
Very
So
good.
the only point of contention is if you guys think Lincoln should be worse than Bush or not. I think, and I'm not sure.
It was
putting him
Obama
ahead.
over McCain. That was a good decision.
Yeah.
Well, everyone's
I'm
over
putting
McCain.
Lincoln ahead.
As in worse, right?
Yes.
Worse, yeah.
Well,
So-
he was more racist too, so I'll go with that. I'll go with that.
Okay, so it's final. Top
And I
five
don't
worst
really-
libertarian
Lasting
presidents.
legacy of Obamacare that continues to plague society too. We're talking about, Bush definitely put in the Patriot Act, which Obama then made even worse. But he's putting his own program in that's still sticking around and making.
I think
Yeah, well, that's why he's in the top 5.
Obama had going for him is a very fawning press because
Oh yeah.
he, which is weird since he was threatening a lot of them.
Yeah.
But
Because he gave so many of them jobs too, though.
yeah, but a lot of Obama's negatives didn't really get a lot of press. I think if we go down the list of all the horrible things he did, like the sicking the IRS on conservative groups, gun running,
Trying to use executive orders to attack Second Amendment rights, which unfortunately didn't come to fruition, but he was definitely looking into it. Obamacare.
Trump's already been worse on guns than Obama was, effectively.
Yeah.
So there.
Though
There
you have
goes
to
all your
admit,
arguments.
nobody really gives a shit about bump stocks.
No, I know, but technically. But Obama did nothing, basically, except talk about some things.
Just
and
a lot of bluster.
Trump did one thing, so that's all. All right, I think that's the final top 5. Did I even finish? Yeah, and Obama number 5. So the next question is, what do you think? Listeners at home, why don't you come and join the conversation in the Lions of Liberty Forum? That is our public group, open to everyone on Facebook. Just type in Lions of Liberty Forum and come and give us your thoughts on what we talked about today. Of course, we also have the very, very secret, super secret Pride Facebook group for people who support us on Patreon. I don't know if we've plugged that at all today or not, but if we haven't, it's patreon.com/Lions of Liberty. And we don't just ask for your support. We don't just beg you to send us money. We give you a ton of extra content. It feels like I do more bonus shows than I even do real shows at this point. So we have this never-ending stream of great libertarian and often not even remotely talking about libertarian stuff podcasts on there. So please do check that out. You know what we never did today, which I just realized? I think maybe I asked Rico what he was drinking, but I was too distracted by his pork chop. We never even talked about what we were drinking.
it was so good.
I think you talked about what everybody was drinking except me.
Oh. Well, I'm drinking Zapporos, and I don't know if I ever mentioned that.
No,
I believe I mentioned I was drinking rosé. Usually I'm drinking something.
Okay, so the real lesson, I just wasn't listening to you guys before.
Yes, exactly.
Cool. Drinking rosé, Jesus.
Yeah.
On a
Middle
Sunday
of the day,
afternoon.
man. It's like brunch time.
All right,
Rosé.
guys. Well, I think we have analyzed this issue all the way to death, and I'm feeling pretty good about our work here today. So, any other things to say? Anything you want to plug? Howie, name all the podcasts you were on in the last few weeks.
that's what I was gonna say. I'm like, normally you say the plugs for the end, but Howie gets them right out at the start, just in case you can't finish the podcast.
Yeah, just
So
This
if
kid
you,
gets too drunk and falls over on his computer.
as I mentioned earlier, if you're a member of our Patreon group, you can hear me on the Legion of Liberty Doom. You can also find me on recent episodes of the Friends Against Government podcast, Sounds Like Liberty podcast, The System is Down, talking about Freemasonry, and
gotta be something else, right?
that's it.
You were on Rachel Ray's podcast.
I mean, unless you want to dig into like old stuff, you can
And I
find me
believe you're
on the
on,
Remso Republic as well as the Johnny Rocket Launchpad, and
I believe you're on the Sean Hannity
wherever
podcast.
podcasts are made, I'll be there.
And the Hannity Tonight. You're also on, right?
That's Rico. Rico's on Handy.
Howie and Hannity. That would be a good show. Howie and Hannity's history. Now we're talking.
I'm not replacing Combs.
All right, folks. Well, please
I
do check
forgot
out
about Combs. Did he die?
Yes.
Sean Puffy Combs died?
Yeah. That's
Hey.
it. Did he?
Alan Combs. Yeah.
The like fake Democrat opposition.
Oh, yeah. I always liked Alan Combs, actually. A little bit. Sort of. He was kind of anti-war.
I forgot Hannity had a partner. Well, he's been looking for one.
Well, we will commence about that after the show. Maybe we'll have a post-mortem talking about Alan Combs. But until next time, don't forget to tune in this coming Wednesday to my man Brian here. Once he gets done yelling at his wife and dog and whoever else he's yelling at in his house, he will bring you another episode of his weekly shot of comedy, culture, and liberty on Electric Liberty Land. And we will also have the absent John Odermatt, who will be here on Friday, bringing you another edition of Felony Friday. By the way, I was originally planning to continue the Liberty draft today, and the reason I couldn't do it is because it's really hard to get 6 people together at the same time, and Odie couldn't be on the show today. So that's why you'll get a Liberty draft hopefully next month when we institute our new format, which will involve rotating this format of show. Every one of our programs will have a Libertarians Living Rooms Drinking Liquor style roundtable once a month. So you'll get another one here next month on the main flagship show with me. You'll also get Brian doing one every month, and you'll get a Is It a Crime style roundtable from Odie. So we're very excited to be bringing this format to greater lengths.
And by the way, do not miss Electric Liberty Land this week, because I will be talking about the Justin Smollett lies and the whole. It's one of the best news stories of the year.
I hope you record it on Tuesday, and then at midnight it comes out that it was all true in the whole time.
That would be hilarious. I wouldn't change my show. I'd be
That's my dream scenario.
And again, today's episode of Lions of Liberty has been brought to you by mathbot.com. The pen may be mightier than the sword, but code is even mightier than the pen. So learn how to build the tools that will bring prosperity and freedom to the world, and learn how to code at mathbot.com. That's mathbot.com. Become mighty, my friends.
All right, now he has to pee.
And you guys can hear Rico nowhere except here and on the bonus shows. So another reason to join Patreon. Until next time, folks. Are you guys ready to sign off with me? I hope you are. Until next time,
live long
and live
free.
free.